Hi everyone, this is the Catalase data analysis. This is after you guys have done your lab, and we're gonna go learn how to make the graphs. So, just a little bit of a refresher for you. So, we're doing two different experiments, one of which is we are changing the enzyme concentration. So, just a reminder that the yeast has the catalase in it. So, you can see that the yeast amount is changing, everything else stays the same. And then for the second experiment, the substrate is changing. So, the H2O2 is your hydrogen peroxide. That's the substrate that's going to bind to your catalase inside the yeast. And if the reaction works, it should produce water and oxygen, right? And so we are quantifying how much gas is produced after this reaction. So just a little bit of a refresher for you. So when you guys go and do this, the data table is already made for you, right? So everything here has been auto-populated. Your lab instructor either had you fill that out or they filled it out themselves. So if you have any questions on how the table is set up, you can ask your lab instructor, but everything is done for you. Just again, a little bit of a reminder, when you guys did your lab, you guys calculated the before and after water levels, and then that's how we get these values here. Those are water displacement after you subtracted your before and your after, and then you had three trials. So just a little bit of a refresher. So on your lab manual, first it wanted you to create a graph showing the relationship between millimoles of O2 produced versus time, right? So we don't really need all of this down here because this is just raw data. So like this one, experiment one, enzyme concentration, and this one, experiment two, substrate concentration, these are all just your raw data. So we're actually looking up here, right? So it's these bolded tables right here that hold your data. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to graph the control, right? So I'm just going to highlight just the data points that I want, especially for this one because there's a lot of different numbers. So just make sure you highlight the ones you want. And then you go insert, right? And oops, wrong one. We're going to want to do a line graph. Now, I like using this one so the dots show, but if you want, you can also do a line graph. It's just lately they've been kind of wonky like that. So I would pick the scatter plot and then the ones with the lines. So something that looks like this, right? So this is my control. Now, remember, for every graph, you want to make sure you have all your axes labels. So you can do this one. You can double check with your lab instructor what kind of title they want you to have, but you can do something as simple as millimoles of oxygen versus time, and then this is time in seconds. Okay, so remember this one doesn't have any axes labels yet. So if you have these fancy menu right here, then you can go to axes titles and they'll add it for you. If not, you can go up here to axes titles. So you can do primary horizontal and add your primary vertical and then just manually add it in. So your horizontal one should be time in seconds, and then your vertical one should be your millimoles of oxygen gas. Right, and the unit for that is millimoles, so you don't really need to put the unit in parentheses. So that's the first part, and you're gonna do it for all of them. And I don't think I mentioned this yet, but this is just sample data, so make sure you guys are doing it with your data. So this one is pretty easy because there's only two columns, so I'm gonna scoot that down here because we don't really need it right now. So scoot that down here. So then this one is where it gets a little crazy. So it's going to start getting crazy from here. So this one, I'm going to want to highlight just the numbers of my enzyme concentration. And just so you're aware, these numbers are coming from here. This is your millimoles of oxygen. The table was just set up so it'll automatically put it here so that you're not highlighting a whole bunch of nonsense. This is from your lab module. You can have your lab TA show you how to do that, but it's already done, so we are not going to go over that. So then I just want to show you how the other one looks like. So I'm again just going to highlight the values. I'm going to click insert, do the scatter plot with a bunch of lines. Now sometimes it does something like this, right? So what that means, if you look over here, this one is purple and this one is blue. It's thinking that your zeros are your x-axis and all of these are your y-axis. So if that ever happens, just find this button, switch row slash column, and then it'll do it correctly. So now this is your x-axis and these are all your y values. So your chart should look something like this, right? It should have multiple lines. So same thing, you got to make sure you have your title. So you can just do, excuse me, experiment 1 enzyme concentration. Make sure you have your axes. So something to point out is you want to change the legend right here so that it represents your data from up here, right? So then what I would do, so let's pretend this one's not here, right? So what I would do is I would just right click the legend and then see how it has all of these options. You're going to want to pick the one that says select data, right? And then right here, see how it says series 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? That's the legend right here. So all you have to do is click edit. You don't need to change any of this, just leave them. Just for the series name, just put 15 ml. Click OK, and then it changes it down here. Right, next one, edit is 12 ml. So don't change any of the other ones, just the name. And then you keep going until all of them is done. Then you click OK, and then that's one of the graphs, right? And then you're going to do the same thing for substrate concentration. Same kind of thing. You highlight the whole thing, right? Do, do insert. It did the same error that it did earlier. So I'm going to click that and it shows all my lines. So that's the first part, right? So you need your control, your enzyme concentration, and your substrate concentration. This is where it gets even crazier, right? So what I mean by that is that the next step on your module, and you might want to have this open if you haven't already, where it says you need to find the data points that fall within the steepest part of the graph. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this graph right here and move it to another page so that it is easy for us to see. So here it is. And what you're looking for is you're looking for the steepest part of the graph. And for this particular example, they all seem to fall around this area right here. So if that's the case, then you can use that data point. So if you're ever not sure which data point it is, just hover over the data point and then it tells you the x and y coordinates there. So I'm going to take this portion of this graph. So first let's focus on this one, right? So if let's say it is, just one type of time for the group, then you can just do that. So what you would do then, it was 15 to 30 seconds. So I would just highlight this part right here. And then same thing, go insert, do the scatter plot, right? Kind of gives us a funky one. So I click switch row and column. So now it's normal, right? So this one is what we're looking for the second part. So I'm also going to move it over to this side so we can see it. This one we don't need anymore, so I'm just gonna bring it down, paste it. So these are the steepest parts, right? So the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna add your trend line and your equation of the line. Now, because these are already lines, when we add the trend line, it's not really gonna show anything. So let me show you what I mean. So if you have these buttons, you can use them. If not, go to chart design. You do add chart element, add trend line, and then add linear, right? And then it's going to ask you which one do you want. So when you change your labels, it'll tell you the correct one. But I'm just going to pick the first one and click OK. And it's already there. It's just that we can't see it because this is already a line. So then you go to add chart element, same thing, trend line, right? And then after that, I'm going to pick the same one, right? And then I go over here and I'm looking for the button that says display equation on the chart. So this one right here, right? So I'm going to do it for a couple more because I need to show you guys the next one. So I'm going to do linear again. I'll do the second one, right? And then same thing, trend line, more trend line options, second one, right? I'm looking for display equation on the chart, right? And then I'll do one more just so we can see the point. So linear, right? Trend line, more trend line options. Oh, actually, need a new one. So add chart element, linear, so number 3, and then the equation, right? So all of them should have equations. So if you have 6 lines, you need 6 equations. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get the slope of each, right? And so if you're looking at your lab manual, that's going to be let's see, number 9, the last step of what is in your lab manual, which says that you're graphing the velocity of gas production versus enzyme concentration or substrate concentration. So you have to do it for both, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new table. I'll do enzyme concentration first. So enzyme concentration, and then this one would be your velocity, right? So velocity just means the slope. So I'm looking at these equations right here, and hopefully you guys know the slope is the one that is attached to the x. So we have several enzyme concentrations. I think they were something like this, right? So then this one, and you might want to double check because this might not be the 15 ml line, right? So double check, but we're just pretending here just for demonstration purposes. So that I'm going to take the slope of that and then do the next one, take that slope, and then this one, y equals 0 means there's no slope, so 0, right? And so again, double check. I'm just taking these as they are, right? And we're just gonna pretend these are not even here. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna highlight it, same thing, insert, and then do scatter plot, right? But because our numbers are kind of wonky, then it comes out like that. But you would title, right? You have 3 different ones. So like this one with all the colors on it, this one is your, let me type it in for you guys. This is your millimoles of O2 versus time, right? And then I'm going to specify enzyme concentration. So for this graph right here, this is your steepest one, right? So that one is called velocity of gas production. And of course, I'm not going to label every single x and y axis. Just make sure that you guys do that and have a legend, right? So that's velocity of gas production. And then this last one is going to be velocity of gas production versus whatever it is. And so in this case, this is enzyme concentration, right? Something like that. Now that one's pretty easy because they're all in the same area. If we take a look at something like our substrate one, this one right here, see how not all the areas have the same steepest slope? So in that case, you would just have to do it separately. So let me show you how to do that just in case. So I'm going to make a new one, transfer this over, right? And so, like for example, let's see, series one is the blue line. So I would say the steepest part of that one is gonna be 45 seconds to 60 seconds. So you can do this 2 ways. You can either just grab it from the big data table, or if you're not very skilled at Excel yet, then just separate them, right? So all I did is I copied the time, right? And then I made a time column, and then I just copied these, right? I just copied these. Now, just a little bit of warning in case you didn't know this. So let me demonstrate. So if I highlight this, I'm going to copy it, right? I'm going to put it over here and paste it. Now, if I'm trying to copy just this, right, you need to be mindful about how you paste it, because if I just do Control V on my keyboard, see how all the values go away, right? So what you actually want to do is don't just do Control V. You want to make sure you right click, and then you want this one, the values, right? Because again, Excel is kind of picky that way. You want to make sure you're doing the one that's for values. And I'm just going to scoot this up because they're not lined up. So something like that. So then same thing, I do the same thing. I do a time, copy, This one doesn't matter because there's no formulas in it. So I just copy that. And if I'm going to do the 12, right, do this and then copy and then paste values. I mean, if you are confused about why that is, I guess you can just also type it. That's fine, right? So to continue my example, so if I need time 45 to time 60, then I'm just going to do that for time 15. So same thing, right? Do that. Just make sure you label. So if you're going to separate it, just say, millimole of oxygen produced, versus substrate, or sorry, versus time, right? With 15 ml substrate concentration, something like that. And then same type of idea, you're gonna do add chart element, add the trend line. It's not gonna show up, so I do my equation because we're gonna need that for later, right? And there's that one. So that's for 15. If I take a look at the gray one, that's series. So actually, let me look at the orange one. So the orange one is actually quite not even that steep. So the steepest one I would say is this beginning one right here, right? So that's 0 to 15. So then I would do that 0 to 15, just do it like that, right? Same thing, insert, do that. And this one got all messed up, so I click switch row and column. Now we have our line, right? And so on and so forth. So if it's not nice like that first one that we did, where they all fall around the same line, then you just have to separate it. And as you guys are writing your equation, just start a column, right? So this one, we can do enzyme concentration. Again, this one was 15 and 12. And then I just take the slope. So then this one is velocity, right? And then I have 1.3137. And then for this other one, oh, I didn't do this one yet. For this other one, it is 0.0667, right? And then you graph it after that. So it just kind of depends on what your data looks like. And then that's pretty much it. So you'll have a certain amount of graphs that you will need. If for some reason your instructor wants it as a PDF, right? So the best way to do that is I'm going to start a Word document. And if I remember correctly, it's going to want some of your data tables and your graphs. So, like, for example, if let's say it wants this one, then I go copy, go to my Word document, paste it, right? So there it is right there. You do it for the other ones as well, right? And then once you get to the graphs, same thing. Let's see. Same thing. You're going to grab this one, click copy, and then go to your Word document, click paste, and then there it is. So I would just put them all in a Word document like this, and then you just go File, and then Save As, and then whatever you want to call it, but make sure you click PDF when you're done, and that will save it as a PDF. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, just reach out to your lab instructor and they will and should provide a list of how many graphs you need for this particular section.